what you want to do there, if you're in second opposition, and the team have left, I'm giving you a very clear example. It's not always this clear. But there, it's quite obvious. The next steps that you would take would be to say that first opposition have shown that the media is going to die because of this. We agree with them. They argued that that was bad because of all of the jobs that are going to be lost, and they talked a little bit about discourse. We want to expand on that, because we believe that if we accept that this media is going to die without advertising, that the democratic discourse will go with it. Because there will be no way in which to challenge the hegemony of the governing elites. Because you have to have this third estate, the critical voice which tests and scrutinises to our democratic leaders. And you build an entire case out of that, out of the principle that was left unsaid or undone. So here, asserted, so assertions or underlying assumptions. Okay, these are three ways in which you can provide deeper analysis. And you'll have heard those words a lot. Get used to those words. You'll end up using them yourselves if you don't already. What is not deeper analysis? Saying exactly what they said, but with slightly different words. Not deeper analysis. Providing one new example and saying, my example is better than their example, is not deeper analysis. You need to explain why you brought that example, what that shows about the world that was different to what was shown by an example that was used previously. So if they do their analysis on the Turkey debate in opposition by looking at the Slovakian example of negotiations, and you say, well, we're going to give you an analysis of the Slovenian example. Unless Slovenia and Slovakia are qualitatively and substantively different as examples, it's not deeper analysis. If you do these things, it's quite likely to be deeper analysis, or as I explained them. If you do provide new evidence, you need to provide why that new evidence is relevant, why you bringing it changes the state of the debate. Let's move on to when you don't have knowledge. Right. I gave this motion in... I'm going to give you two motions, right? And I bet you don't know a thing about either of them. Maybe you do. This house would... this house believes that Australia should, with military force, restore democracy in Fiji, is one. The second is this house would legalise the tossing of dwarves.
I'm an expert on the second one.
Sorry?
I'm an expert on the second one.
I have given both of these motions to quite big and important tournaments, and people have initially gone, are you joking? And then they've gone, shit, and started writing. Now, this is true, of course, of both the top half and the bottom half, but I'm merely pointing these out because it's quite obvious that in both, they're just very simple principle debates. The first thing is, if you know nothing about motion, whether on the top half or on the second half, you can probably guess from the motion a number of things. So, Australia motion, this house believes that Australia should... Sorry? Yeah, we'll get there in a sec. But you can guess from the motion having been given that 1, Fiji has no democracy. 2, that is a bad thing, according to at least someone. 3, that Australia is close to Fiji. 4, that Australia is fairly big and probably has some soldiers. 5, that if its soldiers were to go there, they would have a chance of restoring democracy. 6, that that's likely to be a positive thing for the world. Right? Then I can go, what other countries have we gone to at some point to restore democracy? Then you ask, okay, what is different between perhaps Iraq and this? Well, the fact is here, Australia is doing it literally by itself, so that's going to be an area of debate here. It's a unilateral attack that I'm planning here. So I've got from there, when are unilateral attacks justified? Great, that's 2 arguments. I've got what are the responsibilities of regional powers? We know that Australia is the largest country in Oceania. What are the responsibilities of big powers? We've certainly got, can you bring democracy in from the outside? That's definitely there. And we've got case studies, right? So, the first thing you do, if you literally don't have any knowledge about something, is to go through the motion and identify the core parts of it. So, Australia, okay, why Australia? What is Australia? And what does that actually mean? Australia doing this, how will it do it? Then we've got militarily, so there we go, alright, what am I going to send there? Am I likely to win? Then I've got restoring democracy, that obviously tells me a lot about Fiji anyway, but beyond that tells me about the core principles in the debate, the responsibilities and so on, and then I've got Fiji. I personally know nothing about Fiji, right? I gave this motion, I still know nothing about Fiji. I think it's still not a democracy, that's all I need to know. So that's one part, if I know nothing. Bring it back to the core principles. What happens, of course, if you know nothing about the topic, and the top half have already engaged in all of the principles? At that point, I'm going to have to cheat and say you should read more, and you should know at least something about most motions that you hear. If literally you know nothing about a motion, and all of the principles have been taken by top half, you're screwed, I'll be quite honest. Like, I cannot wave a magic wand and, like, get you out of that hole. What I can say is, still, look very carefully at what the top half have done. In the Fiji motion, have they been explicit about all of those possible principle debates that might happen? Have they really talked about unilateralism? Have they really talked about when you restore democracy, how you restore democracy? Have they actually talked about sustainability? Now this is where I'm going to give more guidance actually that is going to help you with pretty much all of these things. There are certain things that you ask yourself when you are really struggling to find argumentation. This one was where everything was said. You think that you found all of the arguments, but then they said it all. The advice I'll give now is for when you literally can't find the arguments. And it's true of top half, but more true of bottom half because you need more arguments on the bottom half, because generally 5 or 6 have disappeared. One you do, and many of you are going to be bored, so if so, fine. What do you think I'm going to say? Does anyone want to step in? No? Okay, stakeholder analysis. Do you all know what a stakeholder is?
Actors.
Yeah, no. You don't. Okay. Stakeholders are all of the various actors who are affected by this motion. So, there is apparently an exact word for this. Yeah. So here we have Australia. Let's do this with the dwarves, okay? So we have the dwarf tossing, right? Let's say we're on the prop. In fact, on either side, who are the stakeholders in the dwarf tossing?
The dwarf.
So the dwarf is the really big one, right?
The tosser. The tosser.
We've got the dwarf individual. No, we've got dwarves
as a group.
As a group. Group rights, that's important.
As a nation.
People who enjoy viewing.
So audience?
And people who care about more rights.
The tossers. Tossers actually means something in English.
Yeah.
British. British English, yes. So we have our tossers. I think we've got a lot more stakeholders than this instead.
Now the people that would care about the minority, like the dwarves. The people who care about these minorities that don't stand up for themselves.
Leading parts.
I was going to say that.
Okay.
We have the influence on the youth.
Society.
Black market. Why not?
I guess if you could toss a dwarf, you could probably toss a child as well. But that sounds really weird. Sorry.
Can you do it to a dwarf child?
You've got here some various countries where dwarf tossing is an integral part of the culture. So France, for example, dwarf tossing was a rural activity which was outlawed. Okay?